Holla ballers, it's Preacher. Let's talk about Plunderstorm. Let's get the controversy out of the way first. It's the big elephant in the room. First, this shouldn't have been a secret. The problem is, World of Warcraft, so many players, it should not have been a secret because ultimately this leads to people dreaming up what it's going to be. There's just a hint on the roadmap with a pirate flag. Everybody came up with an idea, and inevitably, people come up with imaginative ideas which kind of suits their playstyle. And as we've always said, MMOs are a buffet. They're there to cater to a bunch of different people. And if you let people dream of what will be on the buffet next time, it's probably something they're going to like. And therefore, when they inevitably get something they don't like, they're just disappointed. And the longer that anticipation builds and grows, that disappointment is going to be larger and larger every single time. So it's something that I'm happy Blizzard is experimenting with this idea. No testing, little secret, something to look forward to. But a PvP mode ain't it. Ain't it whatsoever. So I totally get why people are upset about it, because there's a lot of World of Warcraft players who have no interest in PvP whatsoever and will do anything at all to avoid it. There was armistices on lots of servers during BFAs, like everybody's going to play War mode because it gives more resources and more rewards for the same content, but we're never going to PvP. And inevitably came to the forums really upset that people were PvPing in War mode, which sounds very hypocritical, but it is what it is, and it's definitely something that's, yeah, the secretive nature of it I don't think is necessary, because you're just going to lead to a lot of disappointed players. That being said, those players who were extremely aggressive on the announcement before they even got to play it, to the point where they were, like, typing giant essays across the internet about how awful and terrible and disgusting and all that, that is absurd. That is so selfish and ignorant, and it's really sad that a lot of devs and content creators in general know when they put out something that's got their opinion on it. We did it recently with Season of Discovery. Are fully aware when we're making it is, like, regardless of what our opinion is, people are going to be upset and angry, and not just like in a trolly way, but like, you know, physically upset. And it's upsetting because it's like it doesn't affect you in any way. It really doesn't. Number two, let's do some number points of the controversies. Number two, people feel compelled to play. There are a lot of collectors in World of Warcraft. In fact, they were probably the mainstay that stuck around during the bad times, when the end game was falling apart, and like the more mechanically prone people, such as myself, were just very upset with how the game was treating us and forcing us to play. Collectors, transmog collectors especially, mount collectors, all those have kind of been used to that for a while, in the same way that like Mythic Raiders are used to like 90% of the content the game comes out being pointless to them, because it's usually gear rewards, catch-up systems and things that they just don't need. And so having that feeling put onto those players sucks. And people want to collect all the transmogs. They have numbers to complete, bars to fill, which is a classic World of Warcraft thing. And having this PvP mode, I have a little less sympathy for this, because there's always been elements of World of Warcraft that collectors have had to do that they don't enjoy, because it's the nature of being a collector. That's always going to be the case. Is whether you force yourself to do arena because you want that sweet transmog or whatever it might be, it's always existed. So I have a little less sympathy for it. That like, oh god, I've got to do it. Now, one thing that is true about that, though, is that the grind is very long, and they're just changing that. As I sit down here, I played, Plunderstorm came out for me yesterday, as I'm recording this, and they've just announced they are reducing it. In fact, it's already in place, I believe, to reduce that grind. They obviously need players to take part. They have to have a reward system to do that, because otherwise the game mode just doesn't work if nobody's playing it. And every game since the beginning of time has had some sort of reward system, because it's what's done in video games. Mario has reward systems, right? Going back to the 80s. They always need a reward system to incentivize players to come back and keep playing. That's just the nature of the beast. So, and cosmetics, which is what they are, is absolutely the least offensive way of doing it in a video game. There's no power tied to it. Certainly in World of Warcraft, it's just cosmetics. But I do understand that there's people who are like, okay, now I have to do this. And I have a compulsion to do this. And it is a compulsion, because no, you don't need to do it. But that's not a reasonable answer to people who are like, but I do. I get it. I totally get it. But again, World of Warcraft has always had this. And I will say this. It is not wrong for Blizzard to cross-promote their video games, because although every time I bring this up, especially like with my live audience, who are very much a lot of the burned out WoW players, They don't like it, but it is true for, like, an objective standpoint, is World of Warcraft is fucking killing it right now. They're doing so, so well. They have managed to create an environment where if you're tired of, say, retail, or you're not happy with Season 4 or whatever, for legitimate reasons, is you no longer need to go to another MMO. Like, no other MMO in the world has achieved this, what they've achieved in the last couple of years. Is like, they have Cataclysm coming. They have Wrath of the Lich King is still doing extremely well. They have Season of Discoveries, multiple seasons coming out. The Classic Era is still live. Like, you can stay in that comfort zone of World of Warcraft and go and do something else. And you're fine, and then come back to the other one. You're not going like, okay, I'm bored of World of Warcraft because it's just one thing, which would be retail, you know, a few years ago during Shadowlands, that was the case. So I'm going to go and play Final Fantasy XIV or Guild Wars 2 or whatever. They've managed to make it so you can stay within the ecosystem, and cross-promoting that and rewarding all their different players who are doing different things is not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It is a good thing, even if you don't like the game mode. Let's talk about the actual game mode itself, then. Okay, so I love it, and I'm not going to be shy about that, because I think this is really, really fun. Really fun, especially somebody who doesn't care about the rewards. I've never cared about renown, reputation. I've never cared about transmog. So for me, that doesn't matter, and I played all day, and I will continue to play this, absolutely, because it's just really, really fun. I saw a lot, obviously this came out in NA first, which I got the vibe from Holly. They wanted it to be global release, but as it was untested on the PTR for the first time since the Burning Crusade, they've tested every piece of content on the PTR before it has gone live. This is the first time since the Burning Crusade they haven't done that, because it was the Black Temple, I think, was first. They were probably terrified something was going to go horribly wrong, so NA did get to beta test, which sucked, because I was hoping that we'd all log in like, what is this thing, and then suddenly be exposed to it. So they made an announcement early, and then they released it in NA first, and then EU got it the next day. I did hear like, oh, Firewall's completely broken, blah, 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 blah. Now they're changing that. Great, they've already said they're going to do that. But what I learned over the course of the day, I got many wins, which was cool, is that that's just not the case. It's just that Firewall is very powerful in the hands of an amateur. Essentially, that's what it is. It's like you can really do very well with it. Certainly early game, if it's the first spell you get and you're surrounded by a lot of level 1s who've just landed, yeah, you're probably going to kill them because it's so fire and forget, and they don't have a way of stopping it at that point, right? But 5 minutes into the game, everybody has something that can counter Firewall. It's just so fire and forget early game, and against somebody who's not au fait with PvP, or doesn't really consider the buttons they press, if they're just like mashing every button that's off cooldown, you're going to lose to a fire and forget ability like that. However, what you find as you get a bit more practice and a bit more knowledge is that actually the synergies amongst all the other spells is really, really effective if you're pairing them right. Like the whole process here, which again, if you're not familiar with Battle Royales, which I'm amateurish at Battle Royales at best, is that you start with twigs and stones at the start. You have whatever you have, right? You don't have much choice. You deal with whatever you've got. Mid-game, you can start swapping things and tailoring a build, but you still have to deal with what you started with because you don't have that much choice, but you can start pairing things nicely. So if you get like Mana Orb, which is a damaging spell that also knocks back, and then you get Caltrops later, oh, I can now knock people into a stun or a root, and I can keep them at range and maybe work with Rime Arrow now. And now I can keep them at really far range. They can't hit me, and I can take them out that way. That works super effective and is a much more controlled way of playing, instead of just being like, lol, lol, I've got Firewall and I can win, because you just pop a Repel, you pop a Caltrops, you pop an Explosive Bomb, you do whatever, and it just doesn't do anything to you. And it's totally fine. And it has such a long cast bar that you know it's coming. So it's all good. It's all good. So although Fire Swirl is being nerfed, which it should be, because in the early game it's much more powerful, certainly after a few hours of play, it was like, oh, he's got Fire Whirl. Of course he does. That's fine. It's not a problem. All my defensive and utility spells hard counter it like very, very quickly, so it's not a big deal. What I think a lot of people are doing is reading sort of Wowhead or whatever, and like, this is the meta. And as always happens in these games, and why the evolution of these games happens, is like, oh, that's the meta, and this happens from everything from like Hearthstone all the way to Fortnite or whatever, is that people go, oh, well, they're always doing that, so I know that if I take this, then I just stop them in their tracks, and then they're kind of like going, I pressed Fire Swirl, I should have won, and I didn't. What the hell? Or you're doing the opposite thing, which is you're like dismissing every spell until you get Fire Swirl and not learning how to use the other spells, which I got wins with all different kinds of combinations, which is great. That's exactly how it should be. So I'm glad it's being nerfed for the early game, but overall I didn't find it to be too much of a big deal. Why did I enjoy the game mode? This is a game mode that the more you play, the more fun it is. At least for me, right? For me, once I started really understanding, and you can... once you have that basic knowledge, like I know what the spells are by graphic, I know how to swap them very, very quickly and build my build, like even in combat, right? So something really good drops is that you could swap on the fly and then utilize that in some way. Once you're at that stage, which for me was like, I don't know, 5-6 hours in, you're in a really good place, and you just start getting better and better and better at it. Once you start reading the terrain, you know the routes, you know the maps, you know what you should be looking for somewhere. Same with any sort of PvP game, is you will generally die very quickly early on compared to other people, and then you start to get familiar, you start to get comfortable. You've seen these combos before, you know the limitations of those spells because you've used them, you know when they've blown their load, so they can't really stop you from healing at that point. You know when to use your barrel offensively or defensively, or how to set the traps properly, how they're going to disperse, like something like Caltrops, it's like how they're going to disperse in your character, how your Star Bomb's going to land. Like Star Bomb, for example, was an ability I really disliked solo, because even if I had a really good stun, it still wasn't really enough to keep them in place long enough for Star Bomb to go off. They could just walk out of it because the graphic is very obvious. But then when I moved to duos and like we could start pairing abilities, that's when it worked out incredibly well, because it was like, oh, okay, I've got a Star Bomb which will destroy like 2 members of a team, and we can pair it with this, and this works extremely well now, and we got the win based on that, right? Things like that are really fun. So that aspect of it, I truly enjoy. Like, I had a lot of fun with it, and I will continue to play this mode, regardless of rewards, because I don't care about the renown. I'm just going to play it for fun. So that's where I came from, and I just found that more knowledge made it even more fun. Like, at the start, it can be frustrating because you're dying in the first 10 seconds or whatever because you just don't know what you're doing. But the advice I would give to anyone there is, like, just don't drop in the popular zones. It does need more tweaks, though, I think. One of the biggest ones I'm struggling to reconcile is the leveling system, because it has pros and cons. There's nuance to it. On the one hand, I dislike the leveling system because if you have a rough start, let's say 2 groups land on 1 elite, because you ideally want to land on top of an elite because you immediately kill it and you get the spell out of it, and you don't get the spell, you're probably in a losing situation because everybody else doing auto attack while one person does have some form of spell is probably going to get you the loss. Certainly if they pick up Fire Swirl. Like I said, the early game, if you land on a team and they have Fire Swirl, you're probably going to die, and that's not particularly fun. But what you're probably going to do then is have to back off, right? So let's say you land in Stromgarde with a ton of elites and you just end up on the back foot. You're going to probably have to move out. It's almost impossible at that point to catch up on XP, because those teams, or the teams within side, are going to have access to maybe 4 or 5 elite mobs and be level 4 or 5 within the first couple of minutes. You're going to be left with, like, the standard mobs out, the trash mobs out in the world, and maybe a couple of elites, and you're going to be just behind for the entire game. You can survive, but you're likely to reach the end game, which happened to us several times, where people who've been taking part are, like, level 10 or 9, and you're level 7 or 6. And that level difference matters a lot. You're just probably going to get crushed. Because not only are they higher level, have more HP, their abilities do more damage, but the likelihood is, because they got to kill all those more elites than you did, is they just have access to higher tier spells. It also works both ways. A couple of times, we got very high levels of PvE, but like just a smattering of spells, so they were all level 1. So we were high level with level 1 spells. That can happen as well. But generally speaking, you're going to lose if you come up against people who are 2 levels above you. That is just generally going to happen, and it just feels impossible to catch up at that point. And same with rezzing. I'm glad rezzing is there, but what you find pretty quickly is, yes, you can res your partner, but the time it takes to do that, the maneuvering you probably have to do, like several times it was like, you've got to back away because your partner died to a duo, you're going to die otherwise, so I'm going to back away, try and get away, maybe you do that, but then you've got to circle back around to res your partner. All that time lost just puts you way behind the XP curve, and again, it's impossible to catch up. So I was like, oh, I would prefer it if the levels were reduced to 5, Because even then, I can kill a few trash mobs and sort of catch up by endgame by knowing that I'm on the back foot and working around it. But obviously the enemies don't respawn in the game, and there's nothing you can really do. And then you reach the end game and you're level 7 and they're level 10, you're going to lose. Like, it's the nature of the beast. Alternatively, though, it's a good system because there are a lot of players who seemingly haven't cottoned on that just being alive to the end game, regardless of what you do, is a bad thing. And I don't think anybody will really ever get this. They just expect that the absolute vast majority or the most you could get out of this mode is by winning. That's not the case, because several times we would get down to like the last 3 teams, including ourselves, so there's 2 other teams around, and we would end up fighting 2 level 5 teams, because all they've done is sit in a bush for the whole game and wait. They seemingly have not cottoned on to that is giving you the probably least rewards you can get out of this system, and I'm not sure what the game plan is of that. Because that's not how this game rewards you. It's Plunderstorm. The aim of the game is to collect plunder. And you get plunder by collecting gold, opening chests, killing elites, and if PvPing, getting the loot from those guys. That's how you do it. Taking part in the game gives you magnitudes more rewards than just being alive. And these people just seem to sit at the end and have done nothing for maybe 15 minutes or whatever. And then just show up and just get one shot at the end because we're stood around at level 10 with all our spells. At one point, we just watched the 2 level 5 teams just kind of duke it out. Because you're like, I don't... We could kill both of these like so easily. Like, what are we supposed to do here? Like, why have they done this? And so the leveling system does try, at least, to negate people just camping in a corner for the whole game. You're going to get nothing for it. So in that respect, the leveling system works. If you literally didn't take part in the game in any way, no, you're not going to get anything for it. Like, that's the way it should be. If you're not taking part, no, you shouldn't be collecting the most rewards. It's always strange. I know if you're a Battle Royale veteran, you'll be very aware, because obviously they don't have this kind of system, that so many people think the strategy is to go and sit in a box or a bush for the whole game, and then try and show up and get an easy win at the end. And get, you know, Victory Royale. Winner, chicken dinner, coming off the back of that. And doing kind of well. That's not something I want encouraged, and Blizzard has obviously seen that. So in that respect, the leveling system works. How it's balanced, maybe reduced to level 7, something like that, you know. The likelihood is if they have been camping out the whole game, their spells are garbage anyway, and they're generally probably not very good at the game, and it's not a game type that should be encouraged. That would be something I would like to see changed. Ultimately, though, beyond it being a secret, and I think that's really where most of the hatred for this comes from. Like, there's a lot of little arguments going on. It's like, I want to play my main character. Blizzard cross-promoting their games and allowing this to be accessible by everybody, I'm totally fine with. I just think that's a bit weak sauce. The people who feel compelled to play because they want all the transmogs, I get it, but, like, this has been the case of retail for years and years and years. There's always, if you're a collector of everything, yeah, there's modes of the game you don't enjoy that you've probably forced yourself through. And honestly, this is probably one of the least offensive things that you could possibly engage in to get your rewards. Especially now the renowned meta has formed, based on what I just said, which is you dive in, you do PvE for like 5 minutes, and then go and get yourself killed. Time versus reward, that is clearly the faster play than actually trying to win the game. And it kind of sucks. But it is what's working out, and Blizzard's going to be fine-tuning that. No doubt they're going to have some more changes coming to that not be the case, because they obviously want people to play to win. That's the point. But at the same time, they're probably very aware of... I don't know if Blizzard cares. I wonder what your opinion is this. Does Blizzard care if the lobby is full, but a portion of those players are just making themselves cannon fodder? Because they just want to... They don't enjoy it. They don't want a PvP. They have no interest in it. So just being around, killing some stuff, and then dying, and giving other people the satisfaction of killing people, because people love that in PvP. It's I killed you, I ganked you, I win. Is that a big problem? Probably not. Like, in realistically scenarios, there's probably not that big a deal if people want to do that. But I just know that's pretty... At least for me, that would be a very miserable experience. It's like I've done this for like 100 hours of just logging in, killing the same mobs over and over again, and then just waiting to die. That doesn't sound very fun for me, or even in the spirit of the game. But again, it's a player choice. That's what you want to do. That's what you want to do, I suppose. And you are giving the satisfaction to those other players of getting kills. People like getting kills. So I don't know. I'd love to see your opinion on this, because as we just pointed out, it's not that easy a solution, because I think most people are like, no, we should play one way. And one thing we know about MMOs is these are a buffet. Trying to force people to play one particular way is the Shadowlands road. That doesn't work. That's not what's going to happen. And people are going to choose their own path regardless. And usually in World of Warcraft, especially in any other MMO, there's a path of least resistance, and people often take it. So that's what's going on. So that's my thoughts on Plunderstorm. I'm very much enjoying it. I don't think it should have been a secret, especially... They should have known better, certainly as it's a PvP mode, that people were going to be miffed. Obviously people went too far, but there's in a game of millions of players, yes, there are extremists, whatever, it's funny. It is funny. Like, that real... I know people get very upset about it, but you really shouldn't be. I'm just saying, life's too short to be, like, genuinely really, really upset about something like this. Like, it's just not necessary. There are bigger things to worry about. That's my thoughts, guys. Love to see what you think. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.